Hey guys, you ever feel like the gaming industry isn't about making good games anymore, but just about protecting monopolies? Because right now we're seeing a wave of lawsuits from the bigger names in gaming. Not to protect consumers, not to protect art, but to block out any form of competition. Let's start with what sparked this whole thing. Sony suing Tencent over the game Light of Moteram. According to Sony, it looks too much like Horizon Forbidden West. Why? Because it has a bow and robot creatures in a vaguely post-apocalyptic world. That's it. As if those elements didn't exist in fiction and games long before Aloy ever shot an arrow. Meanwhile, Nintendo is suing Pocket Pair, the creators of Palworld. Their claim? That is, it resembles Pokemon too closely. It has monsters, you catch them, you ride some of them, you glide with some, and so Nintendo is crying foul. But wait, what about Ark Survival Evolved? It also lets you tame creatures and glide around. What about Temtem, Digimon, Ni no Kuni, or even Monster Rancher? Why aren't those games under fire? Simple. Because Palworld is actually a threat. It's massively popular, and it exposes how stale and repetitive Pokemon has become. And Nintendo knows it. They aren't suing because Palworld is infringing, they're suing because it's competing. We've seen this before, and it always plays out the same. Remember when Epic Games sued Apple? That wasn't just about Fortnite. It was about the App Store monopoly. Apple takes a 30% cut of all in-app purchases and bans third-party payment systems. Epic tried to push back, and Apple kicked Fortnite off of the App Store. The result? Millions of players locked out, all because a publisher dared to question a monopoly. How about Atari versus Activision? Back in the early days of home gaming, Activision was formed by former Atari employees who wanted to be credited for their work. Atari sued them, trying to bury them. Thankfully, Activision won, and we got the first third-party game studio in history. That one went the right way. But imagine if Atari had won. Gaming history would look completely different. Or look at ZeniMax suing Oculus, accusing them of stealing VR tech. Whether or not there was any truth in that, what matters is the impact. It chilled innovation. Small VR developers became more cautious. Investments slowed. Fear of getting sued just for working in VR became a real concern. And then there's Apple versus Samsung, where Apple claimed Samsung copied the look and feel of the iPhone. The lawsuit dragged on for years and cost hundreds of millions. And in the meantime, smartphone innovation slowed. Everyone played it safe. We got rows of glass rectangles with tiny incremental updates year after year. Innovation dies when fear wins. Let's talk about sports games. EA Sports has had an exclusive license with the NFL for years. That means no other company can make a game with official NFL teams or players. The result? Madden NFL has barely improved in over a decade. Bugs persist, features are recycled, yearly releases feel like glorified roster updates, and gamers notice. But with no competition allowed, EA doesn't have to care. The same thing happened with 2K and NBA. Before competition was allowed back for a while, 2K was dominating basketball games with real with real improvements every year. But once the market was locked down, those improvements started to shrink. Even YouTube's own copyright system shows this problem. People abuse Content ID to strike down criticism, parody, or even fair use. Small creators live in fear of having their content taken down, not because it's illegal, but because it's inconvenient to someone bigger. We're watching the same thing happen across entertainment. Disney aggressively defends Mickey Mouse, even as it nears the public domain. Warner Brothers has tried to claim ownership over the Wizarding World aesthetic. Netflix sued a parody musical of Bridgerton, not because it hurt the brand, but because it showed that someone else could do it better. Back in games, it's not just lawsuits, it's patent trolling too. Konami holds patents on mini-game loading screens, which is why you almost never see them anymore. They patented something trivial, enforced it, and now an entire fun feature is gone. Not because it was bad, but because it was locked behind legal threats. Or look at Konami's patent on ghost racing. The idea of racing against a recording of your own lap. That was brilliant. A brilliant feature. But no one else used it for years because Namco locked it behind a patent. The pattern is clear. When companies can't compete creatively, they compete legally. And even time. And every time they win, players lose. When Sony sues over robot animals and Nintendo sues over monster catching, they aren't protecting innovation. They're protecting stagnation. They're saying, we won this space, so no one else is allowed to try. And that's not how art or games or culture should work. Imagine if Tolkien had trademarked elves and dwarfs. Or if George Lucas sued every sci-fi writer who used lasers and spaceships. Or if Blizzard sued every MMORPG that had classes and loot. These ideas aren't theft. They're the building blocks of a genre. But now every studio that wants to make something new has to worry. Does my game feel too much like Zelda? Will Ubisoft sue me if I use climbing towers? Is this UI layout patented? Sorry. And that fear kills projects before they begin. Meanwhile, the games that win awards and hearts aren't the safe ones. Hades, Undertale, Outer Wilds, Celeste, Stardew Valley, all built on existing mechanics, but used them in new ways. That's what real creativity looks like. Remixing, reimagining, reinterpreting. So no, Nintendo and Sony aren't the victims here. They're not defending themselves. They're just trying to make sure no one else gets a seat at the table. And if we let that keep happening, then we're the ones who lose. Because the future of gaming should be exciting, weird, and unexpected. Not dedicated or dictated by lawyers and locked behind corporate gates. And with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.